Hari Om. Chapter 13. We have reached a point in verse number 11 where Bhagwan is saying, Mai chananya yogena. Why don't you devote yourself unto me, just to me? Bhaktiravya bhicharini. This is a Bhav Pradhan verse where he says, when there is too much of analysis, sometimes the mind and the intellect is exhausted. He said, don't worry, don't do all that. I'm there to take care because I'm the only constant in this entire Brahmand, in the entire universe. The only constant. So hang on to me. Mai chananya yogena. For that, you need to do two things. In the second line, he says, Vivikta desha sevitvam. Why don't you seek out solitary places? Seek out solitary places. This is a game plan given to us by Krishna. And also he says, Aratir jana samsadi, in the same verse. Why don't you develop a kind of distaste for the company of men? What kind of men? He doesn't mean all, I'm sure. So the company of men who are steeped in materialism, who are so sansari that there is nothing beyond that they can discuss. Yes, there are things. We live in sansar, we have to interact with them to a certain point, but do not submerge yourself in the company of such men. Aratir jana samsadi. Keep a distance. Have a distaste for the company of such men. But of course, we seek the company of the satsangi, the one who is on the same search for the ultimate truth. Search out the company of such people only. And what happens to the new seeker, the novice seeker like us, who have not reached very far on the path of realization, and we are new seekers? What happens to us? Our mind is easily abducted and it is easily influenced. Influenced by whom? Those who are constantly talking about commonplace things, and because their mind is always on sansar, and therefore the influence of such minds can be detrimental to the seeker. That's all he means. It doesn't mean some kind of animosity to humankind or a kind of distaste. No, not in that sense. In the sense that you have to protect our own spiritual growth. And protect it how? When you want to keep something to yourself, like your secret hobby, or you want to paint, or you want to do some embroidery or sketching, or just reading some beautiful book, whatever your hobby may be, what we naturally do is we retreat into solitude. It comes naturally. Why? Because we are engaged in something that requires our attention and our complete awareness and our application, a kind of consistency, a kind of love for that hobby or that activity we are drawn to. Therefore, this seeking of solitude comes naturally. Bhagwan is saying that even more so, because you are seeking the highest truth, even more so that you need to seek some solitude for yourself. Snatch time away from people and noise and conversations and all the sansari duties that we have to do in any case. Many of us are beyond those duties now, and we have completed so much of our worldly duties. But no, we want to be mentally involved with them. That is detrimental to our own spiritual growth, because we're not going to get another lifetime. We're not going to get another 50, 100 years to say, okay, now you have time. No. When they are done with our duties, we have to retreat. This is what he means by Vivikta desha sevitvam, retreat. Now, what happens to the mind? See, the common mind, like ours, is when the mind is removed from the company of people, it begins to chatter with itself. You know, there is an inner chatter that goes on. If we don't watch it, yes, it can go on chattering. And then soon, the mind even gets bored of its own chatter. That's the whole paradox. It gets bored of its own chatter, and then it says, oh, I'm bored. And with this boredom, it begins to complain. You see, you can see it in everyone, in ourselves also. We begin to complain. Now, this boredom, this complaint is nothing but a reaction of the mind. Boredom as such has no reality. If you see in the Vedantic sense of what is Sat, Sat is something that can never be destroyed. It's a constant. Right through the ages and beyond time, beyond space, you know all that. That is Sat. Boredom is not Sat. It has no reality according to Vedanta, because it is only a reaction of the mind. Leave alone boredom, any kind of sorrow or vikshep or distraction of the mind or agitation is a reaction of the mind, and it has no reality. It's not real. That's what we need to understand before it abducts our mind and we follow it all day long. So what about solitude? Vivikta desha sevitvam. What about solitude? Yes, it is in solitude that we are not idle. It's not an idle chattering mind. It's a mind that is watching, observing, examining every thought that passes by and saying, okay, like a policeman. Okay, I'm watching all these cars passing. The thoughts will not cease. Thoughts can never stop. They have their own flow. So watching these thoughts like a policeman is the kind of spiritual vigilance that we must become used to. It's like training the mind to say, okay, I'm going to watch and examine and be very observant about my mind without suppressing anything. Suppression, of course, leads to another reaction. But the moment the mind is being watched, you know that as an experience, you will realize that it has the habit of then slowing down because somebody is watching the mind. And the fact that the mind can be watched itself is evidence that there is another watcher. I don't know how many kinds of evidence some people demand, not in our group, but always people saying, no, there's nothing beyond this body, mind and intellect. Then how can somebody observe these? There is an observer, kshetragyam, the experiencer. In solitude, let this experiencer be the witness of everything. And that is what solitude is meant for. When he says vivikta desha sebitvam, it doesn't mean idle solitude or a complaining solitude or a boredom solitude. Not at all. That would be idle. That would be like tamasic way of living. Now, the moment we allow the mind to be watched, to be examined, it begins to let go of the tug and pull and the compulsions of the mind and say, okay, I can see the mischief of the mind. Let it come, let it go. Let these desires or these little scraps of anger and resentment, and let them come and go. Yeah, I'm watching. I'm beyond that. I'm the witness. That becomes a little game with oneself, and that self-examination, that solitude, Bhagavan has emphasized again. How do we do this? When I'm so steeped in my family and work and community work and business and so many groups on my WhatsApp call, and my phone is always compelling me to, it's always pinging or ringing or sending notifications. There's an urgency about these sounds around me. Yes, I have a choice. I can put them on mute and make sure that I examine my devices, whatever technology you're using. I examine my devices, one hour in the morning, 1 hour in the evening. I set it aside so that there is no constant distraction. And the rest of the time, we have to set for our own studies or satsang or whatever text we are following, or at least in solitude, to examine the nature of the mind. When this can't happen, we have another route. I was just discussing it. The other route is that whenever we hear of a spiritual camp doesn't mean that you get away to, yes, of course, we can go to the Char Dham Yatras also. But I have noticed whenever we are on the Dham Yatras that the mind gets completely overpowered by the very logistics and arrangements and taking care of our daily needs and our travel problems in India. No, the mind cannot be overpowered and crowded by all this. So rather not get into these crowded travel plans. But if there is a spiritual retreat, and many of these are announced in India and abroad, of course, there's so many of them are running on Achilmya Ashram and other ashrams also, Advaita Ashram, Ramakrishna Ashram, ISKCON Ashrams. We get notifications saying that from this date to that date, 7 days, there's a camp and you can attend it. Residential camps, and you can land up there. Take time off. This is the only time when we can say that, okay, I've done my duty in this family and I have to go from Grihastha Ashram according to the Shastras and move into Varnashram. And therefore, I can take retreat 7 days, 10 days, just cut off from everything. The moment we are saying that we want to cut off, there is a fear. Oh, what will happen to this or that? Remember, when we are really away from everything, everything takes care of itself and things fall into place. As long as we make certain basic arrangements and take off. We are afraid to take that plunge, afraid to move away, afraid to get away into a group of satsangis and swamis and lectures and spiritual retreats of silence. And there are so many of them happening all over the world. One way is to just get into that retreat, break away for 7 days. When we get courage, you say, yes, I can do it. Take another 2 weeks next year, then another month next year, and you'll find, yeah, the world can go on without me. I'm not indispensable. The world does go on, sansar does go on. It's time for me. Now, when we are in silence, what are the questions that come to our mind? It is time to examine that. What disturbs me? First question we have to ask is, what is it that disturbs me? Unless we examine that, we can never get to the root of it. And it will continue to be like a thorn in the flesh. So we have to examine that. What am I desiring? There's always some kind of unfulfilled wish which is tugging at the back of the mind somehow, somewhere, for not just for ourselves, but for our extended families also. Whatever it is, what is it that I'm desiring? We need to examine. The moment it gets examined, it loses its power and hold on us. That is the beauty of it. Then I have the power. Then I either can indulge in it, or I can take it up or drop it. That power is given back to me. I can do what I like with it, provided I know that it is holding me. So what is disturbing me? What is it I am desiring? What are my attachments? If we examine these questions, that is what solitude is meant for, so that we regain our freedom over these things. Gain our power over these things, rather than let these things, attachments, desires and disturbances overpower us. They cannot have a hold on us. We have to have a hold on them, and that's why it needs solitude and self-examination. And he says also, aratir jana samsadi. Why lose interest in people? Because the material conversations are not going to interest you once you are introduced to the higher truth. Naturally, you say, okay, I've had enough of this. We may of course get into the same groups and conversations and social groups because it's been a long habit. But after a while, the mind says, okay, I'm not enchanted, I'm not intrigued by this sansar anymore. Because my mind now is enchanted and intrigued and is compelled by something higher. So the commonplace automatically gets dropped. Not completely, but gradually it gets dropped. So it's like saying, oh, I have found a diamond on the beach. Okay, so all this while which I was collecting these shingles and shells, I can easily drop them and say, okay, I drop it because I found a diamond, you see, or I found a precious stone or whatever. Then I can drop, or even the plastic beads that I saw thrown away, strewn on the beach. I was collecting those before that in this sansar. I can afford to throw them away. These beads and these shiny plastic accumulations that we are so busy collecting. So the questions that we ask of ourselves and of the sansar and of the jagat in solitude are the answers that we will get. If we never ask ourselves, who am I? What is the purpose of this life? The answers will never come. Then the only answers we'll get are to the same old questions. What's for lunch today? Who is going to get a promotion this year? What are my dividends received from the mutual fund investments this year? These are my questions. So these are my answers. The world will throw at us answers to only those questions that we ask. So ask the right question. The answer is embedded in it. It will automatically appear in some form. Through some text, also through some teacher, or through suddenly somebody sends a video and the answer appears. But the question has to be ours. And therefore, arati janar samsadi is meant for not allowing ordinary, commonplace, plebeian things to invade our minds, to have a open door policy. Okay, you can come and invade me. I'm okay. No, I am not. I have to protect my mind tenaciously from invasion by the commonplace things. So, Aratir Jana Samsadi. Aratir Jana Samsadi. Now, having said this, Bhagwan goes on to give some more indications of what should be done in verse number 12. Adhyatma jnana nityatvam tattva jnanartha darshanam. Nityatvam. He says, the word nitya we are familiar with. It means forever, but here it means nityatvam, consistency and regularity. Okay, what is Bhagwan asking? Nityatvam, consistency in what? In tattva jnanartha darshanam. In that jnana, that the highest truth, knowing which, beyond which there is no other question that arises about the world, about this sansar. There is no other question beyond that. And therefore, that is the highest knowledge. If you make that your goal, he says, then you have to be consistent and forever with it. Why? Because that is the only sat. And the sat is something that never is destroyed. So that which is constant, why don't you hang on to that? Instead of hanging on to those things which are forever changing, as in your relationships and finances and situations and even moods and mental agitations, everything is changing. Let it go on. That's the nature of the world. It's like waves on the ocean. Let it go on. If we hang on to the highest truth, he says, tattva jnanartha darshanam, that becomes the purpose. That becomes the purpose for which we want to keep our focus and strength and consistency and chitta shuddhi, keep our mind clear for that truth. If the mind is not clear, in any case, it's not possible. Adhyatma jnana nityatvam. But how to do it? Simple. Chinmaya ji used to say, if you're thrilled, and if you are intrigued and thrilled by some vision that there is this higher truth and I have to find it in this particular life that I have, then that vision itself is going to give you that enthusiasm, that energy and that sincerity to say, yes, I'm going to engage with this more and more and less with sansar. Anyway, the time has come for us to give up duties or hand over, let's say, not give up, hand over duties of this world. Nothing much left beyond a certain point. Beyond the grihastha, 25 years, Shastras say, we may cling on to many things and claim that there is something that the sansar needs from me. I'm needed here and there. But go away for 7 days and you'll notice the world goes on just as it should. Even if we do it just for 5 to 10 days, we realize, oh, yeah, it's okay. I thought I was indispensable. So he says, the moment you hang on to something else, which is higher, and your vision and your mind is thrilled by it, then you're not going to give it up so easily. So it's like a journey. When you know that your journey is going to be exciting and you know that the destination is going to be even more exciting, then you don't just jump out of the car. You say, yes, I'm going to stick on here and I'm going to drive on the path. Now, what is that? Driving in the car is what? Doing all the things that we are doing for that truth. That is reading, reflecting and discussing, maybe reading the life stories and biographies of saints, maybe watching videos. Now these days you have so many of the biographies on documentaries. So it's much easier, but they are inspiring. The lives of great people, of saints, of rishis, of the truths they have found, even of scientists. There are many scientists asking the same question. And what is consciousness today in the Western world? So in the science forum, for example, there are so many videos. When we are engaging with all this, that is my drive, that's my car, that's my vehicle. And also I will do meditation to quieten the mind, to keep it still, and also to keep it on the highest truth. So all these are upaya. Upaya means just your vehicle. And of course, puja and archana to keep the mind shuddh. All this is part of the vehicle. But do we just do all these things mechanically and say, okay, I'm comfortable in the vehicle, I'm not good? We don't live in the vehicle. We are still waiting for that vehicle, these activities and puja and upasana and actions to take us somewhere. Now that somewhere is not outside, as in our physical journeys, but in this case, that somewhere is a journey inward. That journey inward is where we have to reach, because the truth is where we are. The truth is what we are. That Tvam Asi, that consciousness that we are looking for everywhere is, of course, we realize that is everywhere and it's here right now. But it's not that we are seated in the car and we remain in the car saying, okay, the journey is fine, all the puja, upasana and actions, and no. We have to also get off the car sometime at our destination. So what about this solitude that we are seeking? This is like saying that I need solitude to get away, to solve my problem or to reflect on God. Ask a mother. If a child is not well and the mother has to go to work, suppose. Now the mother doesn't say that, look, I need to retreat into silence, I need to retreat into solitude to think about my child's issue. It is the child's issue which is on her mind constantly. She doesn't have to be reminded by a colleague. Ki, hey, why don't you think about your son and whether he is doing okay? A mother doesn't need to be reminded. It's constant. That's why is it constant? Because that is her priority. Why is Tattva Gyan, the highest truth, not on our mind all the time? Two reasons. First, it is not our priority because we are still so heavily engaged with sansar, and the sansar has a way of gripping us and engaging us in all kinds of things which are immediate, which have a certain urgency. Ki abhi ye bhi kar lo, abhi wo bhi kar lo. There's a false sense of urgency in the sansar activities. Even if you drop them for 7 days, as I keep urging you to do, and to take a spiritual retreat, you will find, everything was going on fine without me. So why don't I just retreat into my mind and take time off? And for that, Tattva Gyan. Second reason, because I can't see it, so I don't set it as my priority. So the only way that I can set it as priority is when I say, I want to listen to the rishis, I want to listen to the scriptures, because then I will know what the rishis have seen, what Vedvyas has seen as the truth, what Arjuna has heard as the truth from Krishna himself. I want to hear that. And then I say, okay, if they have said it, if they have seen it, and if they have spoken of it, it must be something that I can also aim for. So directly I cannot see it because I'm just a novice seeker. That's how we can keep our focus. And that's why Bhagavan has given us in chapter 13 a 20-point program of, first of all, making our whole being which has become so heavy with pride and arrogance and dambha and ostentatiousness, showing ourselves to be pretentiousness, let's call it, and adornment and accumulation. Life has become very sansari, so heavy. So, okay, time to become lighter. Let's travel lighter. Let's start giving away our things to younger people who are, getting married or setting up their homes. Not necessarily related to us, because our relatives we always give away. Lighten our load from material accumulation first. Then lighten your psychological and emotional load. How? By becoming humble, amanitvam, by giving up the pretensions. Nobody in any case is interested in what we have achieved and what we need to talk about on Facebook and Twitter. And, it's just a momentary, somebody says, oh, nice. And then they don't even remember who you are. Social media has become such a crowded, noisy, disturbing place that everyone is scrambling one over the other, trying to make their presence felt, make their presence noticed, have their presence noticed. What He says, Adampitvam, be unpretentious. Nobody is interested. Especially, they may be interested in your, maybe your outer appearance or wealth or momentarily. But in your spiritual growth, nobody at all is interested. It's your own journey. So just give it up. Travel light. So he had also said, how can we do it? Forgive the people who have been, who have tried to take advantage or who have not done the right thing by you. And there will always be someone or the other. In everyone's life, there are some such people. Kshantihi, forgive them, move on. Arjavam, have the integrity to speak exactly what your mind and thought is saying. Don't have divergence in that. And sthairyam, be steady in your pursuit. Unless we are steady in any pursuit, even in the worldly sense, leave alone the spiritual sense, how can we ever get anywhere? So sthairyam, all this was piece of advice in chapter 13 itself. Now all of them have one thing in common, these practices, not only to lighten our load, but to lighten our load of the main thing which is weighing on us, and that is our abhiman or ego, ahankar. So dehabhiman is what each one of these things is trying to reduce in us. Now, I wanted to talk about, yes, of course, Bhagwan has talked about vairagya and solitude, but a word of caution here, that idol worship and all the other practices, of course, we know are just vehicles, definitely. But even when we are seated in the vehicle, sometimes we don't know what is our destination, unless we are grown up enough who have already planned our own journey, so that youngsters in our car may not know what the destination is. We are like those spiritual youngsters. We don't know what the end of the journey is, and we say, okay, I'm joining you on the journey, so I'll do all the idol worship and I will go to all the Char Dham Yatras. By themselves, let me tell you, they are good getaways from sansar and necessary. But we must remember our destination is first Vivek. Vivek means keep the mind steady on Sat Asat constantly. A mother doesn't have to be reminded that her child is struggling with mathematics in school. That is constant in her mind, and she's trying to figure out a solution. Or that he's ill or she's ill, the child. It doesn't need a reminder. We need a reminder that Sat Asat. Whatever I am engaging with, I know it is Asat. And there is one Sat out there which I have to cling to. This Vivek is my short-term goal. Short-term, why? Because beyond that I have to have moksha. And Vairagya is also my short-term goal. From Vivek comes Vairagya. So the moment we remember Vivek, Vairagya, I know that moksha is my goal. That itself makes life simple. Say, okay, this is my goal. I don't need any more distractions. I don't need any more people telling me what is right and wrong for me, and I should have this and not have that. I must invest here and not invest there. I must travel to this place or to some other place. Why? I'm not going to be convinced by any one of them if I am sthairya, if I am steady in my belief that this is the time for me not to be distracted by petty sansari goals. Then most of my efforts then are going to be for moksha, for my own liberation, to be freed from this jail of sansar. Why do I call it jail? Because this body is going to be free, a lucky body I must say, because it will fall one day and go to the funeral pyre and be back to dust. Wow, freedom for the body. But what about my freedom? My freedom, I still carry my vasanas and my desires and my whole baggage over and over again into Janma Mrityu. And so this jail in which I find myself, if I am not keeping my eye on my destination of Vivek, Vairagya, moksha being the final one, liberation. Liberation from what? From birth and death, of course. Janma Mrityu, the whole sansari, the whole chakra of Janma Mrityu. If my mind is not on that final goal, then okay, I'm comfortable in the jail, and then I try to make myself a little more comfortable in that jail, a little more luxuries added. Say, अच्छा जेल में ही रहना है तो थोड़ा air condition भी लगा दो, थोड़ा make myself just comfortable. Knowing fully well this is our bondage. And we are binding ourselves in every time we react to something in sansar, or react to people, or react to situations, we are binding ourselves in the bondage of reaction of krodh and kam and desire and resentment, which carries over with us as our agami baggage. Agami meaning next life. So now going on, in the second line, Bhagavan says, Etat jnanamiti proktam. This knowledge, which is the highest knowledge, Bhagavan says, I am going to declare to you, proktam. Ajnanam yadatonyatha. Opposed to this knowledge, all other knowledge is bekar. It is ajnan, Bhagavan is saying. What is that highest knowledge? That highest knowledge which will lead you to moksha. So he says, ajnanam yadatho anyathaha. All other knowledge that you may spend your time and years and effort gathering, becoming the best writer, the poet, or technical person, or engineer, or leader, or finance, or defense expert, or someone in business, all this vidyaye, let's call them vidya, knowledge, or even the arts for that matter. None of these vidyaye are going to liberate you. Bhagavan is saying this. Ajnanam tadan yadatonyatha. It's not going to liberate us. Yes, they are good for functioning in the world, for attaining a certain kind of status, and of course to complete our duties. If I'm an artist or a scientist or a painter or a doctor, I have to do the duty. But gaining this knowledge is not the end, not the final goal of my life. कि अब तो हमने डिग्री हासिल कर ली और अभी थोड़ा I'll get some more certifications, advanced certifications in my field of MBA or medicine or technology, whatever I'm doing, and then I'm good. Why? I'm going on refining the skills for living in this world more comfortably, to earn another few dollars or money, rupees. Okay, all that is fine within the sansar. But Bhagavan is saying, Ajnana yadatonyatha, all this knowledge, none of it will liberate you. They are not meant to give you vivek, vairagya, moksha. Unless we do karma yoga, of course. We must remember chapter 3. Whatever we read, never forget chapter 3, that when I am completing all these tasks as a karma yogi only, devoting it to Bhagavan and saying, okay, I am not the karta, only then it can lead to vairagya, all these activities. But this knowledge basically leads to what? All this knowledge of the sansar and medicine and arts and leadership and technology that we are so busy gaining, and our children and our grandchildren so busy gaining, that leads to dambha, pride, pretentiousness. I have additional 2 diplomas, you see, in my field. Darpa, ostentatiousness, trying to, dambha, it also means pride, dambha, and darpa is pretentiousness, and lobha, greed for more, and of course raga and dvesha. How come he has more? And I am attached to the kind of things I have gained. Think about it. He is saying there is one gyan, Krishna is saying to Arjun, one gyan which I am going to give you, which is about the ultimate truth of the substratum, the basis, the cause of all existence, everywhere, in all times, in all of Brahmand. There is only one Satya. And once you realize that you are part of it, not part of it, you are it, only that consciousness, and therefore you are actually Amrita. Amrita means undying. Because you cannot die, consciousness doesn't get decimated or killed or destroyed. He's saying that Gyan will liberate you, and all other stuff Bhagavan is called Ajnanam. Ajnan, I have explained, because it does lead to Dambha, Darpa, pride, Kama, Krodha, Raga, Dvesha, in all these pieces of knowledge that we are busy acquiring. Okay. This knowledge, Bhagavan says, I am going to give you. Further on, means Etat Jnanamiti Proktam. So what is this knowledge? We've already heard about what this highest consciousness is. We've heard it in chapter 2, where Bhagwan has mentioned in great detail that antavanta ime dehaha nityam yokta sharirinaha anashino prameyasya. I am indestructible, incomprehensible. I am antavanta, I have no end, etc., etc. So chapter 2 actually had explained what this knowledge is. So Bhagwan says, anadimat param. I am going to explain again to you. Etat jnanamiti proktam. Yes, because Arjuna may have forgotten it, or like us, we have also gone through chapter 2 many times. It is not knowledge that has been integrated in our lives. It is not sunk in and become internalized into our system. And therefore, a good teacher like Krishna needs to keep reminding and repeating and reiterating. And therefore he says, yeah, I'll tell you this knowledge. So far what have we seen? We have seen that the goal has to be moksha through the route of vivek and vairagya and solitude. And that change does not come overnight. So we must not be frustrated. The example given is that of a tree which has been chopped. Now if a tree has been chopped and you see there and you walk past that chopped tree on your morning walk, you will notice that the leaves and the branches are green and fresh for at least a couple of weeks after it's been chopped. Why? Because that freshness remains, that green and suppleness remains, which is part of the leaf and the branch. But what about the cause? The cause of that greenness and suppleness, that has already been chopped. Okay, 2 weeks back. So, the same way, when we are trying to remove this damba, darpa, kama, krodha, rag and dvesha, first of all, attachment and hatred, and reaction to anything in the world. Sometimes we react to our own minds. They say there's no sorrow out there. It is the only sorrow is how our mind has reacted to it. So all these reactions are actually the cause. If that cause has been uprooted, let's say, overnight am I going to wake up and say I am in a saintly mood today? No. The habitual mind is still going to react in the same way. So when we see some of this durguna means these bad qualities in us for some time, that means envy, a little bit of jealousy, a little bit of desire, some kind of agitation, some kind of reaction to what someone said, and instead of forgiving and forgetting and saying chalo uska mood hoga ya uska swabhav hai chalo chodo, क्षमा करना भी इतनी जल्दी नहीं आता, I may react for some time. But Bhagwan is saying, if you have chopped off the very root, the cause of that durguna, remember for some time these actions will be there, these reactions will be there, but they are slowly decaying and they will also be gone. Like the dried leaves and branches, they will be gone. So do not despair and say कि अरे हम तो बहुत दिन से सुन रहे हैं, बहुत दिन से सोच रहे हैं, nothing is happening. Yes, something is happening. We cannot remain unchanged. Having heard the highest truth, in the very words of Krishna, through the description of Ved Vyasji over and over again, or through any other scripture that we may want to read, we just cannot remain unchanged basically inside. Although we may say, हाँ मुझे कुछ फर्क नहीं पड़ा, that's not true. Bhagwan says, that's not true. The durguna will go. It's like the doorway. In the doorway, we see two things. Either we see a person entering or we see the person going. And the person becomes framed in the doorway. So this durgun is seen in the doorway but not coming in. It's on the way out. That's why we see it and say कि अरे मुझे अभी भी गुस्सा आता है, मुझे अभी भी लोगों से नफरत होती है, मुझे अभी भी बहुत सी चीज़ों की इच्छाएं अभी भी पल रही हैं. Okay, as long as we are able to examine them, they will keep dropping and they are on the way out. Not on the way in. Having heard so much, they cannot be on the way in. That Bhagwan has assured us. So now we move to verse 13 where Bhagwan says to Arjuna, I'll tell you that highest truth again. Again, because he has already told us in chapter 2. What is that knowledge? Which is the only knowledge worth knowing, worth gaining, and the rest is all agyan. So he says in verse 13, Gyeyam yatta pravakshyami yajgyatva mridamashnute anadimat param brahma nasattanna saduchyate. Gyeyam, that knowledge, Gyeyam, worth knowing. The only knowledge worth knowing is about the highest truth, about the self with a capital S. That self, who am I? Beyond this body, mind, intellect, that self. Am I this field of matter? Kshetra. Remember this chapter is called Kshetra Kshetragyam Vibhaga Yoga Ho. So the field of matter, am I only that? And all the Vishaya in the world, all the objects and topics and all the Vidyai and all the arts and all the Kalai, Vishya, Padarth, Vidyai and Kala, all these things in the world that we have learned, they are all good for us because they teach us so many things about a good life, and we have to lead a good life, otherwise we cannot even rise above to a spiritual life. But they are not a sufficient or even an essential condition for moksha. Not sufficient condition for moksha. So what's the reason? The reason is that no matter how much we know about these subjects, there's still something more to know about it. So it's never enough. And this knowledge in any field of our chosen profession or choice, in any field of knowledge, that knowledge is not going to break our ties with Janam and Maran. It's not going to sever, not going to break our ties with Janam and Maran. So can you imagine what we have spent our lives doing, studying so much and gaining so much, of course materially. But at the end Bhagavan says, sorry, I have to call it Agyan because it is not Gyeyam. It is not worth gaining. It is not worth knowing. Bit of a shock we all get when we read this. He only says it is not a sufficient condition to break our ties with Janam and Maran. And that is the only thing we need to do. What else is there worth doing? That's what he's saying. Gyeyam. And so, Yadgyatva Mritam Ashnute. He says, knowing which, this knowledge, the highest knowledge, once you come to know, beyond that, there is nothing more to attain. Yajgyatva Amritashnute. You become immortal. Amritashnute. So, what am I actually? Finally, we get all confused and say, who am I? What am I? Am I kshetra, matter, or am I spirit? And therefore, I keep reminding over and over again, we are both. We are spirit enveloped, clothed, cloaked, covered in matter. That's all. Just cloaked. It's a cloak. And the moment the cloak gets uncomfortable and too hot and too heavy, we have to shed it. And this cloak has to fall someday. It's the body cloak. So we are body, yes. We are wearing the cloak, but the mistake is that we forget we are immortal. Because this body is mortal, this body is a dying body, we think, maybe I am also mortal, Maybe I am also a dying entity. No, we are not. That is the only highest truth, Gyeyam, which Bhagavan wants to say. And therefore he says, once you know this, you are going to gain Ashnute Amritam, immortality. Not gain it. There's nothing to gain, but this is the only way we can express in English, gain immortality, Ashnute. We are immortal to begin with. Now, second line, Anadimat Param Brahma. What is this nature of mine? It's immortal means what? Yes, because it is consciousness to begin with. It has Anadi. It has no beginning and it has no end. Can you say when my consciousness, of course as a body we have a beginning and end, but consciousness, what was its beginning and what is its end? Among the millions and millions of galaxies in Brahmand, even when the sun, our small little speck of a sun burns out, consciousness, where will it go? Have we thought about it? There is no such thing as consciousness going anywhere. Okay, this galaxy may burn out, this sun and these few little planets which are here for a few million years, and in cosmic time this is just a fraction of time. Okay, so the earth burns out and cools down when the sun burns out. Consciousness still remains and expresses itself again, if it wishes, expresses itself, manifests itself as life, as a living thing, somewhere else, in some other form, in some other time, in some other universe. It doesn't matter. Consciousness does not end. Anadi, it has no beginning, no end. See how much we think about ourselves when our own little solar system and our own little galaxy and our own little universe in which we think is just but a fraction of that expanse in which consciousness exists. In that fraction, we make ourselves very self-important and give ourselves an additional quality called ahankar. Although aham is there, aham means the I, because I have to say that yes, I will do this work, that I has to be needed to do any common work. It's a very functional I, but we add a very psychologically heavy I to that I, call it ahankar. There's no need for ahankar actually, because who is immortal? You or I? If all of us are made of consciousness, then everyone is immortal. Because then it is not your consciousness and mine, his consciousness and that person's. It cannot be. How can we divide up electricity into pieces, let's say? Can it be truncated? Can it be chopped up? Not at all. So what about Wi-Fi? Yes, some people who have very, very sattvic life, you can say they have a broadband Wi-Fi because they're getting that page, that brilliance. And I have a very small width Wi-Fi, so it's very weak. That is tamasic. Yeah, sure. But can Wi-Fi be different? That very radiation? No, it cannot be. So, Anadi, he's introducing himself again, and the reality and consciousness. Again, he says, Anadi, I am beginningless, I am without an end, Brahma, and that is the vast, Param Brahma. Other, Param by Param. See, Brahma itself means that which is vast, that which is existing forever. Why Param Brahma? Because other than that, there is no other tattva which can exist forever, unchanged, nirvikar, sada रहने वाला और कोई है ही नहीं. Then he says, nasat tanna saduchyate, nasat tanna saduchyate, nasat na asat, मैं न सत हूँ न असत हूँ. I'm not asat. I meaning Krishna or consciousness, or let's talk of only the very neutral consciousness. Asat, because it's not unreal, because it will never cease to exist. We know that through our dream, sleep and waking, through our youth and old age and childhood, and through pralay and through our destruction of this universe, it will exist. So it cannot be asat, but it cannot also be sat. How did this happen? Cannot be sat means what? Here, in this sense, here it means that the example of the sun is being given. The sun radiates light, right? So you can say that for the sun, there is no night. Yes, of course, there is no night for the sun because it radiates light. So because there is no night, you cannot say that the sun has only day. Because night and day are opposites. Day is the opposite of night. Because there is no night on the sun, the day can also not be said to say or to be true for the sun. The sun is only radiating light, that's all. It's not day or night on the sun. So therefore consciousness is not getting involved in this sat and asat, which are opposites for the common material things. Sat, asat. He said, I am just consciousness, just radiating light. I am neither sat nor asat. I am beyond that. I meaning consciousness. Number 14, another description about the all-pervading principle. This principle of consciousness is all-pervading. Number 14, he says, Sarvatah Panipadam, Sarvatah Panipadam Tat, Sarvato Kshishiro Mukham. Sort of allegorical language used here, cryptic language, to say I am with hands and feet everywhere, with eyes and heads and mouth everywhere. Okay, so it's cryptic language. It's a lot of metaphors are used. We will get into the meaning of this allegorical references. Sarvatah Shruti Loke Sarvamavritya Tishtati. What does he mean? I am with feet and hands and mouth and eyes everywhere. Of course, it means that he's talking about all pervading. All pervading. That means Purush. Purush means residing everywhere. Pur, as we say in Nagpur and Kanpur, Pur, rehne wala, is everywhere. Purusha. Now in Rig Veda you have a beautiful description of Purusha Suktam where this Brahma is described as Sahasrashirsha Purushah Sahasrakshas Sahasrapat. Same description in Rig Veda where he says, oh, hundreds of heads and eyes and feet everywhere. It simply means that the same consciousness exists everywhere. Just as we take ink. Suppose we take ink. Now I have a printing press and I am using the ink to print out Zendavesta and the Bible and the Quran and scientific literature and magazines and the commonplace. I am printing out everything, but the ink is the same. It cannot differ. And with the same ink, I am writing the words or printing the words of Krishna or Allah or Jehovah or Zarathustra, Mahavir, Buddha. The ink is the same. Only the words and the alphabet have differed. So that consciousness cannot be different. It just cannot be different in different people or places or times. Desha, Kala, Vastu, in all these three categories, it remains the same. What about the other simple example is that of gold. Of course, we know this example, that gold pervades all the gold ornaments. So I have bangles and necklaces and rings, and the common thing is gold. So it's only a jeweler who looks straight at the quality of the gold. He hardly looks at the design of your necklace when you go to sell it. He is not interested. So a spiritual seeker is like that. He is not interested in naam, roop, form, your achievements and shape and size and achievements in this world. He goes straight to what is the quality of your spiritual life. That kind of a seeker, you know. So the jeweler is like that. Looks at the quality of gold and not at the design like that. But gold is common in all. Pot space is another example. Space in all the pots is the same. But the pots look different from outside. And the pot space inside and outside the pot is still the same. So therefore Bhagavan is saying, Sarvapani Padam Tat. I exist everywhere. It's just a way of saying I have hands and legs and eyes everywhere. Since Paramatma is everywhere, where can I offer my prayers, please? Can you face me to the east or west or north or south? So, या पीने दे मुझे साकी मैं खाने में या वो जगह बता जहाँ खुदा न हो. So a shair has very beautifully said कि show me a place where God doesn't exist, or don't stop me from drinking here. By drinking here we mean praying, because there is no place where I can turn to and say God doesn't exist here. This is a holy place. That is an unholy place. The consciousness is less in my room and it's more in that temple or that masjid or that Gurudwara over there. No, it cannot be. It is something that goes against the principle of all-pervading consciousness. So it is everywhere. Sarvatok shishiro mukham. I have so Bhagwan har jagah dekhta hai. I have heads everywhere. तो भगवान कभी उनकी दृष्टि भी आप हम पर पड़ती होगी. Means I must also become conscious of it sometime. It's a bhakti language. Okay, so let's stick to bhakti language for some time and not over analyze it. It says हमारी दृष्टि अगर भगवान पर है तो कभी न कभी उनकी दृष्टि भी हमारे ऊपर होगी. हमसे ओझल नहीं होंगे भगवान. And those who see God in everything, if they see कि अरे हाँ ये भी ठीक है, उनमें भी भगवान है, that's how भगवान then holds his gaze on us. Bhakti language, okay? So Bhagwan will also hold his gaze on us if we begin to notice, अरे इनमें भी भगवान है, उनमें भी भगवान है, यहाँ भी भगवान है, वहाँ भी है, हर जगह है. In fact, in the 6th chapter, 30th verse, Bhagwan had said, Tasyaham na pranashyami, sachame na pranashyati. I am never lost to them, nor are they lost to me. Those who are with me or recognize me, I am never lost to them. How can consciousness ever be lost? I am never lost to them, nor are they lost to me. Tasyaham na pranashyami, sachame na pranashyati. 6th chapter में पहले ही उन्होंने बोल दिया था कि this is my nature, भाई अर्जुन. If you want, you have to remain with me. It's only the distraction of the mind that carries you away. Otherwise, I'm always there with you. Now that we are assured of this constant light which is with us, this consciousness which is always with us, we gain the courage. Courage to do what? To shed off this uncomfortable cloak. This that doesn't mean that we shed off the body. It means we shed off our over-identification with this body and the mind and the experiences of this body and mind and thought. Over-identification. अरे ये तो हमारा ओढ़ना है. It's a cloak. Okay. Then I gain the courage. When do I gain the courage? When I suddenly realize Bhagwan, He can never leave me. And उनकी दृष्टि हमारे ऊपर हमेशा है क्योंकि हम उनको पहचानते हैं. तस्याहम न प्रणश्यामि. They will never be lost to me. Bhagwan's encouragement gives us the courage to shed this unnecessary cloak. Sarvata Shrutimat. Sarvata Shrutimat. In the second line it says, the bhakta, that bhakta who speaks even softly, or he sings loudly in the masjid or mandir, and the one who simply prays in his heart softly, or the one who even just thinks about me. He says it doesn't matter, I am everywhere. So you may sing or mumble or chant softly or just think about me. It doesn't matter. Even your silent prayer does reach me. Why? Because I am there. मैं हर कण में हूँ. I am there in every atom and in every desh and kaal, vastu, paristhiti, ghatna. I am there. Not only in our little life, around our little lives, but in this entire Brahman, in every atom. So, lokes sarvamavritya tishtati. That's how he ends this verse, saying sarvamavritya tishtati. He exists in the world, enveloping. He is enveloping us. Almost like we are sitting in his lap and he is hugging us and he is embracing us. Enveloping, embracing. And in the presence of that Ananta, that vast, that endless vast consciousness, that compassionate, that Anant, in that presence, how can we ever feel sorrow or distraction or uncomfortable or dejected or sorrowful? How is it possible? Not possible. When we realize that embrace in which we are sitting comfortably all the time. So in the 10th chapter actually he had said, Bhagwan, Vishtabhyahamidam kritsnam ekashena sthito jagat. The entire world, entire Brahman is held by just a fraction of me. Just a bit of a fraction of me holds this entire Brahman. Now I'll just end with a little story about a man who was very, very ambitious, very active and also very successful, highly regarded for his success and material stature that he had in this world, of course. One day he suffered a stroke and he landed up in hospital. And when his friends visited him there, they saw that he was lying quite still, quite idle, quite silent. And they said, you know something? We are not used to seeing you. We have seen you so dynamic in the world, and active and energetic and ambitious. And now, how do you allow yourself to just lie here, having given up all that? So, naturally, the man said, yes, because right now, my priority is to set my heart right, is to heal my heart, because I had a stroke. Now, I have to heal the heart. That is my priority. So, I have to give up all that. In the same way, if our priority is ever set only on realizing the highest truth, or realizing the highest truth nature of ourself, which is the same consciousness, my own nature, if my priority is set only on that, what will we be ready to give up? Then we will be ready to give up. अरे क्या है, होता है तो होने दो, नहीं होता है तो ठीक है. I'm not going to get hung up on a host of things that in the world are demanding my attention, or which I imagine are demanding my attention. Let me assure everyone, the world goes on just as it should, without much missing us, when we take this 5-day, 10-day retreat, and then we find, yes, we can give up a host of things, and we must, because the priority can be set on regaining our true nature, or the truth, which is the purpose of human life. Just like the man who said, yeah, I know I'm used to a very busy life, but my priority has changed now. I have to heal my heart. In the same way, we have to heal our spiritual life. And therefore, Bhagwan guides us a little further in chapter 13 as to how we may proceed towards that highest truth. Taking it next time. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Hari Om.